So first up, we have Mike Getty from the Natural History Museum of Utah. His talk on moving paleontological collections into our new home at the Natural History Museum of Utah.
Well, I'm happy to be here today to talk to you guys at the Tyrrell Museum. I'm actually from Alberta myself originally, and I learned how to do a lot of things I've done in paleontology working here at the Tyrrell Museum. I worked as an off-site manager most of the time I was here at the facility at Dinosaur Provincial Park, but I have many fond memories of working here, and I learned a lot from all the great people here. So always happy to come back home and give a talk at this institution. And this is the missing one, there we go. So I'm going to be talking about moving into our new home at the Natural History Museum in Utah. It's a facility that opened in 2011, and was it 2000? No, 2012, sorry. And so I'm going to talk about the process that we went through to get the collections there at this instance. I've talked previously about setting up some of the exhibits, but this time I'm focusing specifically on moving collections and what was involved in that. This is our new museum that we opened. It's in the foothills adjacent to the university in an area called Research Park, so it's part of the University of Utah still. One of our major sponsors was Kennecott Copper Mine, so they donated a lot of copper, so the outside of the building is covered in copper and is quite a spectacular building on the Wasatch Range in Salt Lake City. We opened the facility, like I said, in November 2012 to great fanfare. This is our grand opening, but for us in the collections, this was just the beginning. We'd barely started our move at this point. But the exhibits had been fully set up, so we focused initially on moving all the exhibits. This is one of our signature sort of exhibit pieces. It's just a random sampling of our collection, showing off some of the items that we hold there. We're a natural history museum, not just paleontological, so we have archaeological, zoological, botanical, and paleontological collections. This is our old museum, for any of you who may recognize it or not. It's in President's Circle, the oldest part of the campus. It was one of the original buildings on the University of Utah campus, built in the 1930s as a library, and then later converted in the 1960s to be the Utah Museum of Natural History, as we were called then. This was the trucks that we used to actually move the collections out, and I'll talk about that in my talk, but it's quite a small, old building compared to our new one, and we really did need to get out of there. It was really falling apart around us, literally. Chunks of wall used to fall off in my office and stuff, so we were happy to get out in the end. So the collections that we moved are summarized here. That's about the numbers of specimens plus of each type of the collection. The volume, 27,000 specimens isn't that much if you have a lot of small stuff, but given the volume of big dinosaurs and stuff, there were quite a bit of volume of material to be moved. I tried to come up with some estimate of the volume, but it's better just to show you guys the pictures so you have some idea. It's not very easy to estimate it. We also moved all the unprepared collections that we had, all the good cabinetry that we had and furniture, and then the best parts of our furniture from the collection. So that's what was involved in this collections move. The first part of the move, we had two sort of major parts. We had all of the small specimens, which were in existing drawers in the previous museum, and this is sort of what we went through to move those. We inventoried all the specimens in the drawers. We rehoused them into new drawers directly, so we didn't move any of the original drawers, even though we kept some of the cabinetry. Everything was rehoused, everything was reorganized, and then the drawers were all packed and wrapped up and moved, and I'll show you that process here. One of the first things we were able to do that was really nice was take over major spaces in the old museum. It had been completely shut down by the time we started the move, and that was great for us because we just took over galleries and workshops and everything. Basically, the paleontology department had the entire main floor of the old building, which gave us enough space to really be able to organize and structure the move and have spaces for this, like laying out foam and drawers and that sort of thing. This was a gallery right outside of our existing prep lab, which was here. This is a gallery facing that. We moved in shelves and drawers and rolls of stuff. That's our lobby there. We used that as a staging area. We really were able to expand, and that really helped us be able to organize this move. This is the type of drawers that most of our collections were in. They were in these old open-faced wooden drawers. So we would begin the process each time by moving them upstairs on carts and then start to rehouse them to put into the new drawers here behind you there. So we had a system of moving them. We had several of the cabinets that housed the new drawers that would ultimately end up in the museum put onto pallets, and then here they're on four-wheel carts. And each week we'd load up a load of these 6 cabinets to move the specimens in the new drawers into there. So we'd begin by lining all the drawers. We generally lined each drawer with 2 layers of 1/4-inch ethafoam. And then we'd begin rehousing the specimens for that week's move. Volunteers helped us a lot in this. You can see he's building little packaging for all the different specimens. This is coming out of one of the old drawers, and then they'll get housed and spaced properly in the new drawers as we go through. Then we did layouts into the drawers, how the specimens would lay out, some lying directly on the foam, some in boxes, that type of thing. And then we had an A-team here. This is BJ and Lori. They're actually up here, volunteers of ours who've come to this conference. And they would take our layout and then go and cut and support all the specimens in each drawer each week before we moved them. So we'd have the layout, and then they'd go through and make sure that every specimen had the proper support and wouldn't wiggle in that drawer. And that involved often, like I said, we had the 2 layers of foam, so we'd cut into the top layer, and this bone's just been taken out, and then it would sit in that little cup, as many of you know who've rehoused specimens before. So everything was supported as much as it could. More delicate specimens were cut into thicker layers of foam, whatever it took to support them. We had different kinds of support structures. I won't go through everything, but you get the idea. And then once the drawers were rehoused, then we'd lay them out within the cabinet with the proper spacing and that type of thing to be able to move without damaging anything. Then we would cover each drawer here with a layer of foam and wrap it around with package wrapping, you know, the saran wrapping kind of stuff in a big roll, so that everything was immobilized in their new drawers before the move. Then we pack them up in our big rolling cabinets. That's a drawer ready to go. You can see all the foam there before it gets wrapped. Then the movers would put blankets over the cabinet to keep them from banging against each other, or if something happened, they wouldn't get damaged. And then they'd wrap with plastic the blankets and stuff. So we did have professional movers involved at the actual physically moving the stuff stage, and I'll talk about that, but this is one of the things they did. They were really good at securing the loads within the cabinets. And then this is when they come up, we'd unwrap all that, and that's where they're ready to be moved up into the new facility. I'm not pointing to the right spot. And here is where we were moving them in the new building. These are the cabinets that are on carriages in the new building. This is they're about 8-foot tall cabinets, and then these are the cabinets we moved in that I showed you that we had on wheels. At the end of the move, we used our forklift and put them up on top, so that's our expansion space in the new facility, is to add cabinets on top of the ones on carriages. Then we would just take the drawers. We had pre-designated spots by the time of this. We moved stuff, and we would just put the drawers into the existing cabinets on the carriages. Most of them went into those other cabinets I just showed you, but this one particular row is our holotype bank of cabinets, and it's different. You can see this roll door. What we have is each pair of cabinets is housed within one of these shelf units. There's a roll top that hides up into there. There's oversized shelving for oversized holotypes, and then these can roll down and give us an extra layer of security for our holotype specimens. And we also have special drawers. These drawers are on ball bearings, whereas our other ones aren't, so we've given them a little bit special treatment, all of our holotypes. We also moved some specimens in existing cabinets. We had so many specimens to move at some times. We would have these bigger cabinets filled, as well as a subsequent set of the cabinets that we were moving over there. We would move these. We had a moving set of these cabinets as well to put into the existing ones on the other side. And those were put up on top ultimately. So we would use some of the cabinets to move the drawers that we would put up in these cabinets, and then eventually we moved all those cabinets and put them up there. So that was part of the move to getting all the cabinets themselves. As well, we had some tall existing cabinets, and they were challenging because we barely got them in the old building in the first place. This is in our basement collections area. You can see they don't really fit. We had our movers had to like squeeze them out through tight spaces, through tight hallways. It was pretty challenging getting some of this stuff out of our old collections area. The old oversized collections were moved also. And we would begin that process by bringing them up from these old shelves down in the basement. We'd do an assessment on them, what kind of repair and stabilization they needed. If they needed some serious stabilization, they would go into our repair lab, and I'll show you that. And then if not, they would get sorted and palletized to be moved and stay on pallets in the new specimen as opposed to just spread out on the shelves. Then we used the pallets to move them, and we put them ultimately on one of two systems. We had pallet racks, and we had cantilevered shelving. So this is what our collections look like in the existing facility in our crowded basement. So just getting stuff off of there was a bit of a challenge. We would take it off. The movers actually helped us pull stuff out, heavy stuff off these shelves. Everything had to be manhandled. There was nothing on pallets initially. We'd put it on pallets, bring it up to our staging area where we would sort and do it, which got overwhelming at times. We had had so much stuff on these pallets that just was coming up and had to be dealt with. If it was needing support, anything that couldn't really be handled on both sides very easily, we built clamshell structures for. There's been several talks at these symposiums about how we did that. We learned in the hands-on one in Wyoming how to do this with the Smithsonian crew. We set up a lab where we started doing it ourselves. We had big rolls of felt and fiberglass and made an industrial lab out of one of our old workspaces in the museum. We had giant sandboxes where we could lay out the specimens, putting the plastic down so we didn't get our sand full of plastic, and start building these clamshells, putting on the felt, sewing it up, cutting it to fit. There's one of the things before we start jacketing it with all the seams on it. And then we had teams of people, depending how many we needed, to work on jacketing them, covering them up. There's one side of the clamshell finished. We had two sandboxes actually going, two huge sandboxes we built just for this purpose, so we could have multiple specimens at different stages being prepared in this way at the same time. It was quite efficient because we only had 6 months to do this whole move, so we had to act fast. Once one side was done, then that's the first side of the clamshell, back into the sandbox to do the other side. Some of the specimens were fairly complicated. This is the skull of Diablosaurus. We learned how to deal with complicated stuff pretty well, with lots of cutting and sewing and that type of thing. And again, a team of people just working really hard to go ahead and get this stuff plastered. So we had just all week, lab was going full-time, as well as the drawer operation going full-time simultaneously in different parts of the old building. Some of the bones we had to repair were ginormous. This is the scapula of a Camarasaurus, one of the largest bones, which is also curved. We had to glue and repair some of these big bones, and you can see it's pretty challenging to repair something that tall and that curved. And then to handle it and get it back down in the sandbox, we had to get people together and work together as a team to deal with it. But ultimately, we made these kind of structures for everything like that needed to be handled. So now we can flip them over, screwed together, and get at any one of our large specimens, which wasn't possible in our existing facility. Some things were pretty challenging. This is trying to get one that wasn't in the clamshell into the clamshell. You can't just pick them up and put them in. So that's one of the challenges. You have to make the clamshell on one side and then get it down and use a group of people. This is why we need clamshells, because you don't want to be doing this with your specimens. Once they're in the clamshell, you can flip them easily, but this is what happens if you don't have one. You can see this is a Therizinosaurus pelvis, very thin, delicate specimen. Whenever we got done one like that, we were very happy without breaking it. You can see Yella there smiling because we managed to flip it without breaking it. Once it's in one half of the clamshell, it's pretty easy. Then we take it out and we trim out the clamshell jacket, make it really nice and finished. We did that outside. It creates far too much toxic dust with the fiberglass and everything inside. So we're all suited up. It was a pretty industrial process. You can see we were wearing the Tyvek suits and heavy-duty masks and everything. It was a pretty nauseous lab to work in, so we had to dress appropriately. Then once we had all the material together and decided how it was going over some of the unprepared material as well, we'd have our staging area with the pallets, and the movers would come, and they had a lift gate and would get it up on there. 5 minutes, is that? Okay. They'd get it up onto the lift gate, load it in the truck. I mean, it was great to have the professional movers. We had them 2 days a week, every week. So we'd spend the rest of the week building the load. We worked 6 days a week with our crews putting together the load. So 4 of those days were building the load. We'd build a load of pallets and build a load of cabinets. And then on 1 day a week, the movers would come and move all the cabinets. And on another day, they would come and move all the pallets. We had 1 or 2 trucks for each of those moving days, depending how many materials we had to move and what the other collections' needs were. They were really good at packing everything really carefully, getting it in the truck, all blanketed up and everything. Then we'd bring it over to the new building. This is our hallway in the new building where we could spread it out and decide where stuff goes. So this is one of our pallet loads, obviously, spread out down the hall. At first, we didn't even have the collections area finished. We had to use, this is our lab. You can see all the snorkels here. This is our lab before we set it up, and we would store stuff in here until the collections were ready. This is our collections getting ready. We have all this pallet racking. They're just building the cantilevered shelves, which will line this wall shortly thereafter. So we had to kind of adjust our schedule according to what was going on. There's specialized loads like these oversized things that movers were really good with dealing with. They had a team of people to get it exactly in the right space on the lift truck to get it in there and stuff. They were really great. We had things like holotype skulls, this one of Cosmoceratops, which was carefully moved out and onto them. They took extra care and got extra teams when we had difficult jobs like that and packed it in. This one got almost the whole truck to itself, for example, heavily padded, and then moved over safely to the new building. We also moved some of our collections, like the invertebrate and part of the paleobotanical collections, in boxes rather than drawers. So we had volunteers who would box up the collections and do it. Then we'd wrap them up like this and get them all moved like that over in boxes. This is our loading bay in the new building, so you can see we can just roll stuff out compared to the old building where we had to struggle to get everything on. This is how we could move stuff into the new building. A small amount of this stuff, especially with these older materials and exposed, would go in the freezer. In the museum, all of the archaeological collections and zoological collections were frozen. Very small portion of the paleontological collections were frozen for a week in the freezer. So this is some of the stuff we chose to froze. This is mastodon stuff in very open jackets with exposed material that might be infested. So we did freeze some things. We had also this kind of stuff, old boxes of Cleveland Lloyd stuff that was never jacketed and is in these boxes with a lot of paper and cardboard. That would get frozen as well and moved over. Other things we had, strange objects like bones plastered into exhibits that we had to move. These guys were great at dealing with that. Moving through tight little spaces was always a challenge, and we had a slope to get out of our collection. So we had this hill, which for the most part wasn't too bad, but when there was really heavy things, these guys are totally struggling to hold that back because it weighs a lot. And I told them they needed more people, but these guys are strong. They always wanted to do it with as few as people as possible, but they're just getting pushed down the hill by that specimen. And then, of course, lining them up and getting them ready to go. There's just a lot of stuff in an old collection like this. We had stuff that wouldn't get through the door. Here they are realizing it's not going through. Here they are getting around the specimen and physically lifting it up, putting it on an upright cart so they were able to take it down there. So they were pretty strong guys, a bunch of Samoan guys at Bailey's Moving. And other things, we had mammoth and mastodon skulls on shelves, which they would get down for us. They used plywood for that one. We had collection spaces like this. We had to get this stuff through. It's a pretty old building, like I said. And then, again, more of the stuff coming out. This is a mastodon skull here, and they figured using a moving blanket was the best way, and they got it out over there as a big group, and were able to set it down on a pallet for us. There they are, looking very proud. It was really heavy and really hard to move. Then at the new building, again, we just lined stuff up, got it all ready, and we would use pallet jacks to move everything within the building. Once we got it up there, we had a forklift, which we got at the end of the move, really. So we had rental one for part of the time. This is a Lindy from Germany, an awesome little machine. It's got some really great attributes. If you see here, the mast actually travels forward rather than just the forks, which is great because we have this outriggers here and these carriages here. So you can only drive so close to the thing, but then we can use the mast forward to put stuff onto the shelves. So it's a fantastic forklift that met all of our needs. So we were lucky to be able to get that. Here's what the collections look like at the end of the move. Quite full. This is the This is those cantilevered shelvings they were just putting up, I showed at the beginning. They hold all the really heavy stuff in the unprepared collections. The prepared collections here are on these pallet rack shelves. They're already fairly full. And then they're on compactors, so this is the widest they spread. That's when we spread it to use the forklift. When they're closed, they look more like this. So we have 3 levels of oversized shelving racks, and 2 of them are on the carriages that travel on these things here. This is the overview of the move. We started in October and finished in April of 2012. We had 3 full-time people involved in the move, 3 part-time, and about 15 volunteers that were just dedicated to the move. We moved 2 trucks a week, like I said, and then, of course, highly valuable were the large Samoan dudes, and they told me they were okay with me referring to them this way. And then now we're still reorganizing the move, reorganizing the stuff, and I just want to thank our dedicated team of volunteers and interns who did so much, and of course, our Samoans of superhuman strength, because I don't know how we would have done some of this without those guys, really. And finally, I'm going to end with an announcement that we are planning on hosting the next Preparators Symposium at the Utah Museum of Natural History next year. We haven't set an exact date yet, but we'll be announcing it over the next year. So we invite you all to come to the next one at our museum, but I won't actually be there myself. I've recently accepted a position to become the Chief Preparator at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, so this is my last event that I'm representing the Utah Museum of Natural History, but I'll hope to see you guys all there. I'll also be attending, I'm sure. Thanks.